Perfect. Hello, everyone. Good evening. Alex here, as always, host for Phoenix Holdings. We have here quite a guest. We have Robert here from Genius Project tonight here with us in Phoenix community. Robert, you have the floor. Give us a couple of words about yourself.
Thanks, Alex. Thank you, everyone, for listening. I appreciate all of your time, and I'm really happy to answer all your questions and talk about this. It's been a huge passion of mine for the last 5 years. A little bit about myself. Um, I first heard about cryptocurrency, or first heard about Bitcoin, a little more than 12 years ago. It was when I was working for a cyber warfare company, and one of the vulnerability researchers was talking about it. I didn't understand it. A month later, maybe about 6 months later, in early 2011, I started mining, and it made a ton of sense then. I thought it was really cool that I could get paid by an entity that didn't exist, and really cool that an entity that doesn't exist could assist us with something so fundamental in our society and our culture, cryptocurrency, of course. Since then, I had done I did a lot in the mining world, started some of the first hardware-based co-location facilities to help miners save with electricity expenses. A bit from there, I started working with exchanges and started one of the USA's first peer-to-peer crypto exchanges, marketplaces. Since then, I'd worked with endless regulatory bodies on their confusion and their attempt to understand, what businesses were doing and where to go. In 2017, I started really looking into, or more like the end of 2016, I started really looking into, what was value in the first place and where was this all going? Because clearly there was a new direction and trajectory for everyone. And it was like a new internet, a new way to transact in finances, and something that clearly amplified our freedom and, our ability to really know that we have free will and exercise that. That's more philanthropic, but there are just so many cool possibilities. And in the crypto industry and community in late 2016, you could not point in a single direction without there being opportunity. There was opportunity in every direction for everyone and everyone's talents. And I thought that was really cool, or a lot cooler than the world that I was taught existed, where it seemed like you had to go to college for everything you wanted to do. And but in about late 2016, I started exploring, well, what is value in the first place? And if we can do this with technology, then perhaps we can make the ultimate financial product with technology, where technology can do a lot to assist. I ended up working with the Dash Core Group, not like working for them, but I guess my company partnering with them and myself partnering with them and assisting. And I became an evangelist for Dash cryptocurrency. And we'd work together with two companies of mine, Dash Core Group and a marketing firm, to bring Dash to the number 3 coin in the crypto market cap. And I helped them get onto bigger exchanges because I understood this industry, and I understood, I had been spending my entire, since 2011, really eating, living, breathing anything cryptocurrency. And cryptocurrency was like my marriage and my relationship, and my other relationships were a little jealous of that. Not really, I'm being funny. So since about that time, where Dash had gotten to number 3 in like spring of 2017, I was a big user of Steam at the time and blog posting, and I could see a lot of fundamentals of value that people it wasn't talked about much. And since then, I've been researching, there has to be a way to make a financial product. There has to be a way to make one that really has been what humanity's been trying to make all the time, something that stores value, appreciates in value. So something like that has to exist or be closer to being in existence. So I spent that time researching that. And about 2 years ago, started hardcore researching it and getting more serious about that while I was running a savings company. So that's a little bit about myself. And thank you for listening. And here we are to talk about the Genius Smart Financial Contract, and what it's looking to do, and having the community catch up on what the people behind the Genius Smart Financial Contract have been doing over the last year and 3 months.
That's quite the intro, Robert. Thanks a lot for that. That's very extensive, and it provides us with quite the insight on you, on your background, on your history, pretty much your passion, which kind of brings us to, as you said, to the project itself, to Genius. To be fairly honest, me personally, I'm not a technical person. So from the start, would you say that people like me who are not very technical would pretty much have difficulties in understanding the concept and the product, or you guys kind of have the info so well put that even people like me, I'll repeat myself, can understand?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think people can understand this. For example, a Bitcoin is kind of a simple concept, but it's really complex when you want details. Smartphones are simple when you use them, when you actually start experiencing them. But if you haven't experienced them, as an adult, you might have a lot of questions about it. So with the Genius Smart Financial Contract, I see people who use it, they'll learn a lot more by using it and experiencing it. But when questions involving the details of it, some can be fairly simple to understand in metaphor, and some, the more you dig into the details of, well, why is that? Why is that? It just gets more complex the more whys there are and the more language, and ultimately better expressed in math and code. But on the surface, there is a surface for this, and I'll try to stick to that because I know that helps.
Definitely. You put things into a different perspective. So I'm happy to know, as with all projects, actually, at the, I'll say, if we want to cover the standard discussion, we definitely won't get into so many technical details. If we dive into the features and the utilities, we may get towards a technical perspective. So yeah, I think it only makes sense. So yeah, we kind of understand a bit about your background and where you come from, and what we'll see what your plan is, of course. But how did the idea, before we actually start discussing about the project itself, how did you come up with the idea for what was your main inspiration, or the team's inspiration? This is what I actually forgot to ask. What's your role for the project itself, and how many members in the team? And then we can understand or if you want, you can cover in the same answer. How did you guys came up with the idea?
Sure. So there was quite a few questions in there. The first one I'll grab, and please, remind me of the other ones in it, because that's all great. Is, well, where did the inspiration come from? And well, I'll start with my role. I guess you say my role is really the person who had the dream and the desire for something like this to happen, and communicating that dream and that desire with other like-minded people who eventually found interest and said, oh, heck, I'd like to do that. Like, I'm really into tokenomics. I'm really into math. Like, this is cool. I love economics too. How on earth would something like that work, right? The team size today is, well, let me count it, because I don't have 4 technical people, 2 smart contract developers. No, hold on. 2 smart contract developers, 1 web developer. By the way, there's people from the community that helped with, that are helping with Jenny.app for the app website, for the design. So, you can say the team is part of the community too. I say the number 4 because that pops out in my mind, because 4 people total have worked on the tokenomics, and including myself, and that's been a huge part of the work over the last year and 3 months. But where does inspiration come from? In 2017, I was using Steam, and and I was working with the Dash group, and I was thinking of a better form of money. And Steam had this really cool part about it. Like what Steam was is Steam was like a blogging platform similar to Medium, or at least Medium was what this Steam blockchain was looking to work with. Other information about Steam, part of the development of Steam was Dan Larimer, who did BitShares and who later did EOS. And so Steam was like a social, like networking website, and you got paid to make content. Well, more like when you made content, you got paid from people upvoting your content. And there's a lot more to do with the tokenomics of that, but what was really cool and inspiring about it was that you were paid by like the attention that other people would give you. And attention is it's valuable. We can't do any tasks really without putting our attention on it. So I thought this was like incredible that the one of the fundamentals of Steam's economics was the fact that somebody could, with their intentions and with their attention, create an article or share a cool image they made, share it similar to if they were to share a post on Facebook or Twitter or medium.com. And then other people would see that, and other people could follow the person, other people would upvote it. And every 3-second block time, the blockchain would say, all right, this person got upvoted this much, these people they get this many rewards. So it was like, when you mine for Bitcoin, you have machines and stuff like that. And, or when you mine for Ethereum. But with Steam, you could get paid and you would be, quote, mining just by producing content. And then other accounts proving that they liked that content. So that really got the gears in my head moving, that value, wasn't just something because it was scarce or because we thought it was scarce. It had a lot more to do with attention also.
Okay,
Trying to
I
keep
was
these
definitely.
answers short too.
Yeah, for sure. No worries, no worries. There are so many questions, and yeah, well, I'm hoping we're gonna get to each and every one of them. I wasn't actually hoping. I wasn't actually sorry. I wasn't expecting this. Personally, I'm not familiar with Steam um, as a blogging platform, but I would only assume it's pretty much similar in terms of features and the ability to basically earn money from it. To I mean, not to name a few, I think it would be WordPress, which is the most familiar with. Um, Probably Joomla.
Yeah, maybe that.
Yep.
Not so much, but today, Steam. Today, there's another project called Hive that took that over, and anybody listening can go to the website hive.blog, and you can see like what Steam kind of looked like. You can also go to my personal blog by typing in, for the web domain, you type in geni.to/blog. That's jenny.to/blog. And it'll bring you to the Hive blog. And that's a look at what Steam is.
Okay, that's interesting. Definitely a different perspective. Um, I'm hyped because we haven't actually had um, anything similar to what you're gonna present probably today. So yeah, without further ado, um, tell us about Genie itself. Is it Genie or Genius? How would you like me to refer to the product itself?
Genius.
Perfect.
GENI would be the upcoming ticker symbol, and current ticker symbol
Okay.
for the placeholder.
Awesome. Okay. So
Genius.
GENI will have the ticker, and then Genius is the project itself. So let's discuss a bit more about Genius. What does it stand for? Um, what can your typical investor or potential investor, as we are right now here, what can we expect from Genius in a couple of words? And then we'll probably go deep into the features and utilities and roadmap progression and so on and so forth.
Okay. I mean, the name itself, Genius, refers more to like the definition of something being exceptional, like intellect, but more so creative power or natural ability. And for the investor, Genius of course has an investor in mind, but Genius as a smart contract, what it has in mind is really what a lot of people in the blockchain world want in the first place, which is passive income. Genius is aspiring to be a store of value that pays you passive income similar to Bitcoin mining. And to do so, it works very similar to a certificate of deposit, but on the blockchain. That's in simple words.
Okay. Well, you said this basically is in simple words. So give us the non-simple version, and let's see if we can make sense for that.
Oh, cool. Well, so the non-simple version. Okay, so what is the need? What's in the industry currently, or what's lacking in the industry? Well, let's say that the store of value industry, it's at least a $20 trillion industry. And with store of value, this includes gold, which is more than a $10 trillion industry. It includes time-locked deposits for the USA and China. The USA and China are, I think the USA is like $6 to $7 trillion dollars alone, in China, not that much, but around there. And then you have Bitcoin and Ethereum together, although I don't consider Ethereum store of value. But you have Bitcoin, and then you have Ethereum, the current decentralized finance king, having a combined 1.1 trillion share of this industry. So store of value is a 20+ trillion dollar industry, right? And the whole purpose of it is to store your value, protect it from inflation, and amplify your value if possible. And this work, right? This duty to take someone's value and protect it. This has given governments a lot of power and a lot of influence. You have families with a lot of wealth wanting that to be protected. And as well, you'd have over the time, over hundreds of years, not even thousands of years for governments, but also financial corporations, all seeking to make a product that helps protect people's value or protect businesses' value, to protect it from things like inflation, but to also make money from that money, right? To have the money go to work, to amplify the value. So this is something that has been worked on for a long time by people. And the internet that we have today, we live in an internet society, and so we can do a lot more things with that. And that's where blockchain technology has come from. And Bitcoin has shown that possibility, Bitcoin being the first to show that possibility of the fact that a store of value can be a digital thing. So the Genius token will address the store of value industry. And all of the effort and planning behind the Genius Smart Financial Contract, all the planning, all the effort behind this has been to create an asset, design an asset to only amplify in value over time and produce, passive value, passive income for its users. So imagine that you're holding an asset that pays you passive income and only increases in value over time. That is Genius. And there's of course there's a ton of problems that had to be solved to get there. And there were problems with tokens in the past that tried this, and there were successes with tokens in the past that had this. And Genius is really standing on the shoulder of giants, as that saying goes, standing on the shoulder of giants to become the next better product, and perhaps the best, perhaps a new protocol for storing value.
That's quite the insight. I'll be honest. I wasn't. I'm a bit surprised, to be fairly honest. But it's a good way of being surprised, because as I've said, typically, not to judge, anybody from the blockchain itself, we don't get these types of products. We not we as in Phoenix, we as in the space itself. BSC has been. I'm assuming you guys will be launching on BSC. Is that correct?
It's looking to go in that direction because of the demand we keep getting from the BSC community.
Yeah, when it comes to blockchains, I mean, you either go with BSC because everything started here. Um, just to put it in perspective for everybody out there, in terms of if we take out BSC, and you probably Robert can confirm this if I'm right or not. It kind of leaves you with two other viable choices at the moment, both of them lacking in various features. One, in my perspective, would be Ethereum, but we all know how Ethereum goes. We recently saw a massive gap from Ethereum, and the second, in my opinion, would be Polygon. But in the end, Polygon is lacking the speed of transactions, which would cause eventual frustration within the investors. Probably, if you take into account, the third one would be Avalanche, Avax. But yeah, I don't know if you guys want to go that road. So in the end, I think BSC is probably the best choice. I don't know if I'm correct when stating what I just said. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, no, I think you've got a lot of insight into that. As like business people or successful business people and successful investors know, you've got to listen to the market, and you've got to listen to what the market wants. And um, and what I think is very clear is that the BSC community, there's a big BSC community, um, and but there's not a good store of value on BSC, or at least not one that I've seen so far. Like, if there is, I'm curious about it and I want to see it. So you have to listen to the market. You have to listen to what people want to use, and that doesn't always mean it happens. It doesn't always mean it becomes the popular thing. Um, but yeah, so the BSC community is very interesting to me personally because of that. To be frank, the most interesting communities to me when it comes to smart contracts and when it comes to, well, let me say it this way. We've all seen how all of the amazing abilities from Ethereum and the apps that were built on Ethereum. For example, decentralized loans, where you can pay off the loan at any time. You can get, a US dollar coin or US dollar for any cryptocurrency you have that you don't want to really liquidate. You can, in the Ethereum world, you can, instead of having a bank account, you just have your US dollar or your token representing US dollar, just have that in your wallet instead. There are good store of values. There's an excellent store of value on Ethereum called Hex, and I'm sure a lot of people know about that too. And there's wrapped Bitcoin on Ethereum. So you have faster moving Bitcoin in Ethereum. So Ethereum has showed all of us that these wonderful possibilities, not just with finance, but also with games and collectibles. But what everybody has also seen is like, wow, this is really expensive to do, and this is relatively slow compared to a computer, right, or a centralized database. And so what do people want? They want cheaper transactions and faster transactions. So this is what the market wants, and we've seen, like, okay, this kicks ass, Ethereum kicks ass, but we can't pay those type of fees. Your average person cannot pay the type of fees to get the benefits, the financial benefits, the computing benefits, the extra security. Your average person can't get that. So of course, this is where Polygon, Avalanche, BSC, Pulse Chain, this is where they've all come from. And even before that, a competitor with Ethereum that lost to Ethereum, I guess you can say, in market share. But you had BitShares, but today you have EOS, you have Wax. Like, Wax is the king of NFTs, and they're very inexpensive to mint. And Wax is the busiest blockchain out there. If you go to a website called blocktivity.info, blocktivity.info, it will rate all these different blockchains by the amount of operations they have, 24 hours. But the point is, people have been priced out of using Ethereum. So many things that once worked on Ethereum, they don't really work anymore because there's not a lot of activity, because the fees are too high, and it's catering to people that don't pay those sort of fees. So this is where Binance Smart Chain is very interesting to people, when they can do this kind of computing with potentially not paying such high fees.
Indeed, it makes sense. Yeah, I was aware of the website itself of Blocktivity, and yeah, I haven't actually checked it. So it's a big, just as a comment, it's a big and pleasant surprise for me to see Wax at the top. Knowing pretty much all the efforts that they've been through, and everything that they try to accomplish, kind of paying off at the moment. But again, not to digress, thank you for that. I'll say a free piece of education towards the community. If you guys don't know what Blocktivity is, we can talk about it after the AMA. Just type in blocktivity.info. Yeah, it gives a different perspective. Back to Genius, because you kind of have me on the edge right now, Robert. To be fairly honest with you, um, I'm seeing when I'm going to your website, as a as a I'm looking at the Genius sacrifice. Can we dive a bit into this so you can try to make me understand what is the whole process? Because it sounds, I'm gonna say it sounds familiar to something that I've heard before, but I've never done it myself. So what does that stand for? What does it represent?
Okay. What does the sacrifice represent, right? Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So a crypto sacrifice, yeah, it sounds, to some people it sounds cultish, right? Like, sacrifice, what's going on here? And then to other people, they recognize, oh yeah, like, we've all made sacrifices in our life to make something come true. The sacrifice website, the Genius sacrifice, was put on sacrifice.to, and it explains that. I have a live stream that explains sacrifices, but in a nutshell, excuse me, in a nutshell, a sacrifice to me, and sacrifices that have been done recently, I feel are the absolutely most fair way to distribute the initial supply of any token, or the initial supply of any cryptocurrency or blockchain asset or token or NFT or whatever, NFTs. And so how a sacrifice works is, it's an event. And in this case, for Genius, it's a 28-day event. And there's a message behind it for financial freedom or other political messages. But here, the sacrifice event, 28 days, and once the event starts, there's an Ethereum address. There's like a blockchain address. Once the event starts, people will send tokens, cryptocurrency, where they'll send tokens in Ether or whatever to this address. So as the sacrifice event goes on, everyone can see, like, everyone who is participating in this event. Everyone who participates in this event. And the event is it's like a pledge for people who believe in financial freedom. And it's a pledge for people who are involved, saying, hey, I'm sacrificing this much token, which has this market value. So I'm losing out on this market value because I believe in what this project stands for. And heck yeah, I definitely want to get airdropped the initial supply of this. I want to use this. So a sacrifice, for people who aren't partaking in a sacrifice, the sacrifice becomes a big blockchain record of everyone who who's interested and wants to be a part of this community, of this smart contract, this token. And you can see all the accounts that want to be a part of that by looking on the blockchain, by looking on etherscan.io or bscscan.io. So, well, but what does it mean for somebody who participates in the sacrifice? Once again, it's a 28-day event. And, with a Genius Sacrifice, this event is about cryptocurrency being freedom, financial freedom, and transactional freedom. A lot of people hear about, how the United States got its freedom in 1776. But a lot of people don't hear about how it had a lot more to do with financial independence and financial freedom. And this is something that's been under attack a lot for people, always. So here with this Genius Sacrifice, it's about financial freedom, and that's the message. And people who do sacrifice, what they want to do is once the sacrifice event starts, they'll see an Ethereum address, or of course, a BSC address. They'll see that address. And what they can do is they can take their Ether or their Binance coin and other ERC20 tokens, like the Legacy Genius token, Hex, Shiba Inu, Wrap Bitcoin, Crypto.com's CRO, Link, what else there? Decentraland's Mana, and stablecoins. They can send their stablecoins and their ERC20s or BRC20s over to the sacrifice address. So effectively sacrificing their coins. Now with this 28-day time period, the earlier you sacrifice, the more bonus points you get. The more you sacrifice in one transaction, that is, the more sacrifice points you get. And the point of these sacrifice points is that those sacrifice points will determine, once the event is over, it will determine how much of an airdrop you get for the new official Genius smart contract. Any questions about that, by the way, before I continue on that?
No, you can go ahead, just finish the explanation, and I'm assuming any questions about the smart contract itself, Nina?
Okay. I mean, that's the sacrifice in a nutshell. And some examples of recent sacrifices. Well, I think it's good to say that Richard Hart and his team made this concept a lot more popular. A community sacrifice in cryptocurrency it's not new. It's been around for about 4 years, definitely longer, but I found an article that was written 4 years ago about it. And there was a sacrifice for Pulse Chain that over $660 million was sacrificed for that. There was a sacrifice for Pulse X, which is kind of like the Uniswap of Pulse Chain. And that did nearly $1.1 billion. So nearly $1.1 billion of like real money that could turn into Lambos and houses and stuff that was sacrificed by a greater community. Then you had other projects like Liquid Loans. So you've had a lot of projects recently do sacrifices and have a very fair form of distribution, initial token distribution. So that's what a sacrifice is.
Yeah, now that you put it like that, I can be honest with you. Pulse X is the one that I was mentioning in the beginning, and that's where I first personally that's where I first saw the concept of sacrifice. I didn't actually do it myself, but yeah, I mean it was a new concept for me and a new feature. I'm happy to see, although very different from what I'm reading right now on your website, a very different perspective, at least from my point of view. And again, take into account everybody that I've never done this before. I'm not technical, so I'm trying to keep the pace up. Basically, I'm looking at.
That doesn't help because I talk pretty slowly. Yeah.
No worries. The fact of the matter is, your comments on the side, you and I are kind of similar one to the other, because I like to start off by saying one thing and then I make a comment on the side, and you do the same thing, and it helps me understand or try to understand to have the big picture. Basically, I see here that one genie sacrificed will award each and every one of us with 333 points. Um, that's basically where I started off with the info, and now it makes a lot of sense because yeah, I kind of get there's a multiplier here as well. Let me actually make sure that this, I think this was added in the chat, but um, let me make sure that this is there. Good. So now we kind of understand, or I kind of understand how the process works in terms of your development for the token as a roadmap perspective and progression. Where would you guys say you are right now, and what can we expect within short term? Short term, define it as a couple of weeks, maybe a month, let's say.
Yeah. Well, I wish I could give you clear expectations, but the blockchain world just isn't like the current corporate and software world. In the blockchain world, when you're making tokens, and this is affecting a greater ecosystem, and it's it's a Toma. I don't know what that was, but it sounded like you have a cute cat in the background that you're calling to. Um, this in the blockchain world, it's hard to I can't just say like, hey, this is going to be released in 2 weeks. But what I can say is that we spent over a year in research and development, and a little more than a month ago, the white paper finally came out. Had just a lot of substance and formulas with how Genius was going to work, and now Genius is in development. It's been in implementation for about 2 to 3 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, and on the development side for the smart contract, it has been extremely smooth. It has been awesome. I love, I mean, I've been in charge of the technology of many projects, products, businesses for most of my life. And I always love when a project is so well prepared that implementation um, is super smooth. So the Genius Smart Financial Contract, the contract itself, written in Solidity, of course, that's going super smooth, and I couldn't be happier with that. Every time I talk with the two developers on that, it's just like, hey, here's where we're currently at. We're implementing this. I review the code as it's being implemented as well, and we discuss any little things we may need to discuss there. Because after all, the developers, they were not part of the tokenomics. They were not part of the research and simulations and development of simulations for the tokenomics. So they have education to be done as well. So in that case, this will be audited. I'm talking with the company tomorrow on the audit. I'm not going to name the company because I want to make sure it's definitely this company. So as far as the timeline, it'd be 4 to 6 weeks. It could be longer, of course, too, because if a security audit says like, hey, this is a big problem, you got to figure this out, we've got to figure that out too. So so as many people have said in the blockchain world, and with Ethereum 2.0, people have been waiting forever for Ethereum 2.0. Things do take a long time. Thankfully, this is a smart contract we're talking about, and there's been already a lot of planning on how it will be implemented, and there's been a lot of planning of how to resolve problems that we're gonna run into and have to solve differently and intelligently with Solidity versus what software developers would typically use, or the typical path of implementation. So yeah, I feel extremely good about it. And from where we're at now and the current progress, and some people being sick and then having sick days and then back at it too, I feel really strong about 4 to 6 weeks. I feel super strong about that.
So just to make sure that I get the facts straight, 4 to 6 weeks we are looking uh, for you guys to fully audit the contract. Did I understand this correctly?
4 to 6 weeks for implementation to be done, and then from there, audits.
Okay, perfect, awesome. Yeah, I feel the same as you. It doesn't really matter right now. The auditor. We're not gonna push on that. Um, to have the perspective before we go ahead and try to answer as many questions as we can from the chat. Um, we kind of covered the roadmap and the audit and the smart contract itself. Um, what can you tell me about your tokenomics and how did you guys figure this out and how will this work?
Okay. All right, that's a really big question in a small number of words. Well, so first of all, tokenomics. Anybody listening that's like, okay, tokenomics, what the heck is this? It's really the economics of the token. Some basics on the tokenomics for the Genius Smart Financial Contract are that the initial supply will be 240 billion, at least 240 billion, and up to 275 billion. This, of course, depends on actions from the market actions from people. The base annual inflation is 5 to the third power, which is about 4.2%. And inflation is paid out only to Genius miners, similar to with Bitcoin mining, all of the inflation is only paid out to miners. Now, Genius miners, they're not mining with equipment and electricity, by the way. They're mining with a different methods, staking. Now, Genius, part of its tokenomics is it does have deflationary mechanics, where coins are being burnt. However, the burning does not affect the rate of inflation. For example, I guess with PancakeSwap, like native token or whatever, not native token, but Pancake. I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong. Apparently, with that, there was recently a problem where like a lot of its supply was being burnt, but I guess that really wasn't helping the tokenomics. I don't know. I just heard about this, but the thing to know is when you have an inflationary, when you have any sort of like economics where the inflation is based on the supply, whenever you have burning, that can be a problem because now you have less supply, less inflation. It can be a problem for the people who are mining for it. So the deflationary mechanics, what I'm saying though, with Genius, they're not going to be a problem. In fact, they're going to be much more of a benefit, not only to traders or people just holding it casually, but also a benefit to people who are mining for Genius. So there are deflationary mechanics, and as well with Genius, how you get a piece of those inflation rewards, or how you get paid with Genius, is basically you lock up your Genius for a certain amount of time. And so you make a promise to the network that you're not going to touch X amount of Genius for X amount of days. And then you also tell the network what your preference is as far as like, well, what happens if you do break your promise? And so when you have your coins locked up, when you do have your coins locked up, you might want to transfer that value to somebody else. You might want to liquidate your locked up coins without breaking your promise. So there are the tokenomics of this. They have rewards for that. So put these tokenomics in a nutshell. It's all aimed and designed and geared to reward people who are holding on to Genius and who are making a promise to hold on to Genius. The system is made to reward that. And people who break their promises are, they can be penalized to a certain degree, the Genius smart contract itself, it incentivizes people to keep their promises by payments, extra payments of inflation, etc.
Definitely, definitely. You know,
Another little piece on the tokenomics is that the initial distribution is being done through that sacrifice that we talked about earlier.
yeah, I was actually just about to ask if the sacrifice will let's say be correlated with the distribution itself, and as always you
Yeah, it will be.
yeah, I thought it so, but still you answered before I could ask, so thanks for that. Yeah, in regards to the tokenomics, what I can only comment, because yeah, there isn't much to to dive in from there. It's the economics of the token itself. Um, it's a very vast project itself. So I'll say that the tokenomics is a project within the big project, because that's kind of what's going to provide the sustainability of the token itself. If your tokenomics are not built to sustain your vision, either your reward or your wallet or your whatever inflation slash deflation ideas, then yeah, you're probably gonna suffer a bit. And we've seen so many projects that failed strictly because not they didn't actually implement all their utility, because at some point their tokenomics could not sustain it anymore. So I'm with you on that side, Robert. It's a very important aspect of the project, and it needs a lot of um, outside of the box thinking, if I may put it into that perspective.
Yeah, and and it's happened too many times where tokenomics really weren't thought about. Like basic tokenomics were thought about. And even with Ethereum, like Ether was never made to be a store of value. The native token for Ethereum never made to be a store of value. And then like now you have changes in Ethereum coming because people want, they want a better value for Ethereum, or some people want a better value for Ethereum. So like, okay, we're gonna have coin burning. And um, I mean, everybody wants cheaper fees, but miners want to continue making the money they're making. It's complicating. It's complicated. And how do you balance those rewards? Well, the best way really to balance them is to have them stated up front, just like with Bitcoin. With Bitcoin, it said, hey, these are the rewards you're going to get. You're going to get 50 Bitcoin every 10 minutes, approximately every 10 minutes. The whoever got the hash right under a certain value gets 50 Bitcoin. But then Bitcoin's protocol stated, hey, after every 210,000 blocks of 10 minutes, the amount of rewards you all get is going to be cut in half. So, tokenomics, the rules need to be clearly stated to people involved, and the rules can't really, if they keep changing over time, you definitely run into problems. Like with Ethereum, a lot of the tokenomics are changing over time now. They have fee burning. It's like, okay, so fee burning, and but people don't see the more scarce Ether gets, the higher fees are going to cost relative to US dollar anyways. So there's a lot of problems there. So not only that, like with with our tokenomics, we would simulate how those would work. We would simulate what it would look like in the population, and you use different tools to do that. You make little apps with Python. You do very simple things with Excel. You use Sigma 4. There's a ton of stuff to do, but it's funny. It's fun because imagine being in a room with a bunch of mathematicians. Imagine being in a room with a bunch of software developers, and in a room with people who are making all these crazy Excel spreadsheets, right? You're in this room with all these people to talk about things you've discovered about the current proposed ideas of tokenomics. And everybody's showing what they've discovered, but no one understands it. Like, check out this spreadsheet. No one understands the spreadsheet, but everybody understands the conclusions. Like everybody understands the graphs and the end data. But then it's like, cool, Jim, how did you get to the conclusion? What did you do with the tokenomics? And Jim's over there saying, well, I had an artificial intelligence that assumed that people would get in at this rate and also assumed that people would only make the smart decision 90% of the time. And then the other 10% of the time, it was a random decision that was dumb. Because, with like Bitcoin and everything, you might assume people are going to do the best move. And that's the direction the tokenomics are going to go into. But you have to account for the fact that people are going to make decisions that aren't too smart. So yeah, talking about these sort of things, I don't think it's something you learn in school. I think it's something that you just are constantly discovering in gaming. Yeah, it's missing in the industry that we have. Paying a lot of attention to tokenomics. Well, what happens when you pay attention to tokenomics? When you really pay attention to it? Well, one, you get something like Bitcoin that has more than 1 million fold in value over the last 10 years. And when you pay attention to tokenomics, when you really pay attention to it, you get things like Hex that had 10,000 fold in value in less than 2 years. So paying attention to the tokenomics really pays off.
I'll say it actually pays off within the long term, because although, I mean, surely Hex, just as a comment, before I start reading some of the questions, Hex has been around for some time, but definitely when you take a look at the tokenomics of Bitcoin, surely, I mean, projects have been trying to duplicate those tokenomics, at least in theory, but imagine what we don't know, and that's being applied each day to Bitcoin, and it's still working. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
that kind of completes the full picture.
yeah. And well, with Bitcoin, there are some very serious things missing from Bitcoin's tokenomics that that really, Bitcoin, inevitably, Bitcoin is going to be uninteresting, but it surely will still have its crowd. For example, Bitcoin, one serious flaw with Bitcoin was that there was no decentralized treasury. There was no way to continue up with development or work with that. And that's fine, but that's where you have all this competition coming in. That's where you have Vitalik eventually saying, screw this, I'm not going to try to do things on Bitcoin's transaction script. So you have Vitalik eventually saying, like, all right, color coins aren't going to work. The Omni chain's not going to work. We need to develop something that works differently. Bitcoin might be king today, and it's not going to be king tomorrow. So, and that's because of things that were not seen in tokenomics early. Like, how do you predict 10 years in the future? And so with Genius, the tokenomics behind Genius have taken the problems that Bitcoin ran into account. Genius has taken into, well, what is this going to look like in 10 years, though? What is this going to look like in 20 years? Because in Genius, you can lock up, X amount of dollars worth for a little more than 12 years, 4,444 days, right? But how's that going to perform over 4,444 days? How are the tokenomics still going to stand up? Well, that's where we had been looking into research and development for a little more than a year. What does it look like when everybody goes, heck yeah, I want a piece of that inflation? Then what does it look like when people get disinterested in it? How does it incentivize people to use it and to continue using it and to remain useful? That's a really difficult question that I feel very few people in the world currently have the experience to tackle that problem. I say very few people in the world, as in these people are going to want to be familiar with the blockchain industry itself and the blockchain community. Yeah.
Yeah, these kind of questions, I mean, we could probably spend at least 6 hours here talking about them, and we still wouldn't actually have the answer to them for sure. Let's see if we can actually, if this is okay with you, can we maybe try taking some questions from the chat? I'll read them, and we'll see where we go with this.
Yeah, definitely. Feel free, even personal questions or whatever. We can have a lot of fun. That can be cool.
Awesome, awesome, man. For sure, for sure. So far for me, it's been quite a quite an educational session for me. I've learned so many things. So let's see some of the questions from the chat. I'm gonna try to be a bit more selective and not go straight um, for the easy ones. Okay, this is an interesting one. So David basically wants to know every project he puts it quite in perspective has a a SWOT analysis, its strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat. So for this particular project, we're not going to list each and every one of them, although we kind of spoke about the strength opportunity as well. Let's cover. He wants to know the weakness part of the project. Can you figure out if there's a weakness? Have you guys thought about it? Since we just spoke, and this question comes quite at the proper time. We just spoke, and you guys analyzed this from a perspective of 1 year, 6 months, 1 year, 10 years, so on and so forth. Could you guys figure any weaknesses or potential weakness that this project may have?
Yeah, plenty of them. Plenty of them. One inherent weakness that will always be there is the substrate that the Genius Smart Financial Contract runs on. For example, the substrate is Ethereum, right? Or the substrate could be Binance Smart Chain. So really, when these smart contracts um, are on different chains, they are also vulnerable to the chain itself. For example, like Hex really touted itself on being very gas optimized. And it's very gas optimized, but there are methods of it that are definitely not gas optimized. And so, well, what happened? Ethereum decided to change the gas costs when you're reading from disks. So this is more technical knowledge, but long story short, it ended up costing significantly more money suddenly out of nowhere to use Hex um, to use Hex to claim your stakes and to claim your passive income, and that's because of a weakness of the substrate. And and by the way, Genius solves those problems anyways, and will cost a lot less when being worked with the Ethereum network. But with this weakness there are still solutions. You just have to find these weaknesses. Like what if your substrate goes bad? Well, you have to have a way to port. You have to have a way where people can exodus a have a way where people can exodus a chain and go onto another one, right? So things even to this kind of level were thought of. Things that they're edge cases, but they happen. I'd say that's the biggest weakness that needs special attention and can potentially be is more potential future attention.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah. Plus, on the question was kind of interesting, in its nature, but definitely, I don't think that any project can strictly say, okay, the only weakness that we have is this. So,
Correct.
constant development brings out. It's pretty much like a software development. You always find some bugs, you fix them, then some more appear, and so on and so forth as part of the constant evolution. Um, Another interesting question. Sharif would like to know if you guys, as the team and developers behind it, is it your main focus right now on the community, on the development of the community, and let's say adoption, or on the market itself and on the product? Ideally, I would say you guys are pretty much dividing your attention, expanding your team to be able to cover all of them. But I'll let you answer this one for sure, Robert.
The focus is very similar to Satoshi during the Bitcoin time. Satoshi was just working on the code, working on the idea, had some other people pop in, and like later into the project, like Hal Finney and eventually Gregory Maxwell and a lot of these other people, and that's really my focus, and the quote team's focus. I put quotes over team because it's the blockchain world doesn't need to be so formal like as the corporate world. the blockchain world and in this Genius smart contract, really what's valuable is that things get done and that things happen. And we're used to like hiring people, right, to get things done. Like, oh, let's have a job post, let's hire people. This world has changed very rapidly, even in the last 2 years, as far as this goes. But really, what it boils down is this has a lot to do with attention and intentions as well. What it boils down is, there's nothing better than finding people who are really passionate and have a lot of desire to help and go with what their passions are. So my passion and my desire, at the moment, is seeing that this protocol is created and communicated and can be used elsewhere. And my team right now, my team is just either implementing the smart contract or waiting on things so that the decentralized app can move forward more, besides mock material. And other as I make there's been like an update to the white paper, for example, and before that gets published, myself and other people from the research side are analyzing the heck out of that, to see, well, what does that tiny little change do for the potential of the whole ecosystem? Does this slight tokenomics change, is this really like as more balanced as thought? So when it comes to the other really important things, like to answer, I believe it was Sarif's questions. So to answer like the really like the other things that are really super important, like, okay, well, what about this being available to other people? Like, what about getting on marketplaces and exchanges? What about the community, developing the community? What about what about all these things? Well, right now, the marketing, the promotions, all of that stuff going on right now has been 100% driven by the community, and we've been really lucky to run into people who have a lot of experience in the corporate world and in the blockchain world that want to see this work out because they want a better store of value. They've had Bitcoin for a long time and they see the problems with it. They see this industry growing in different directions, and they see DeFi exploding still, exploding in a good way, in a growth way. So yeah, the best thing I can do is stick with my passions and desires and my experience along the whole way of this. And the reality is, when Genius is launched, it will be a complete product. It won't be a project. It won't be something that has ongoing development. It'll be a product, sort of like launching a rocket into outer space. When NASA or whoever does that, all of their ducks have to be in a row. Things have to be perfect, or else it's not going to be successful. That's the current focus here. And if it is successful, you will see the community take that into their own hands most of the time. And that has happened. That happened majorly with Bitcoin. That happened majorly with Ethereum, even though there's been a whole lot of influence from the venture capital world, in the banking world. And you've seen that happen with Steem. You see that happen with Hex, like big time with Hex. I hope I answered the question. It's a difficult question. I understand it. But if there's anything lacking from that, I'd love you to put focus on it and for me to give a better answer, or to give something that satisfies that.
No, I think you actually got it. To be fairly honest, given if I were to expect the answer from my question, if it were my question, yeah, I think you nailed it for sure. That's definitely 100% a good answer.
In general, like, not to cut you off, but in general, the reality is if something is useful, people will use it, and people will continue to use it. So it has to be useful, right? That's where my focus is. It has to be useful.
Well, of course, but in the end, to be fairly honest, Robert, the way I see the project, the way I see the team, is that you guys did the review, you analyzed the perspective, the market, and what's most important, at least from an investor's point of view, you guys took a look at the demand, and you said, listen, there's a huge demand for this. Let's build something to sustain and to supply that demand. And once you know that there's demand and you can supply it, I mean, typically, how can you fail? So if we were to discuss right now, and I were to share something like, Robert, I've been in search for a project that will allow me to stake my tokens for 3 years locked, and you to have that project, you know that I have a demand for it, you would market that project to me, and that's a win-win for both of us. That's how I see the Genius project itself. It's just that you're not marketing to me or to any of the 70 participants right now. You're marketing it to the whole space, to the whole crypto industry, if I may. So yeah, I think it only makes sense, to be fairly honest.
I think one of the things that has gone wrong a lot of the times is also um, communities, cryptocurrencies, technologies, like even technologies like the Palm Pilots from long ago, not giving the correct tools, not giving good tools for marketing people to use, for technologists to use, and a lot of those tools are being covered today and will be covered, right? So it's good. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm extremely a lot of things that have happened in the cryptocurrency industry, like they've always happened sooner than I thought they would. I'd sit there, I remember sitting there with a bunch of guys at a bar talking about like this was, I think, November of 2012 maybe. And we're like, it's inevitable that Bitcoin's going to hit $100. Bitcoin was like $4 then. And we're just thinking about it in price, right? Like it's inevitable. And then, I was the one saying it would happen in 6 months, and everybody was like, you're crazy. It's going to be more like a year or more. But then Bitcoin ended up hitting $100 in 2 to 3 months, right before all that stuff with Cyprus, or when that stuff with Cyprus happened. So, point is, in the cryptocurrency and blockchain industry, things happen a lot quicker than I expect them to. They're able to move a lot quicker. And so that same thing has happened with the Genius token, the placeholder token. There's a placeholder token out right now that if you have that placeholder token, you can sacrifice it or you can hold on to it. But either way, that placeholder token, the Genius placeholder token, it's called Legacy Genie, or Legacy Jenny. It guarantees it. It also helps guarantee that you'll get the initial supply of Genius, right? And so between marketing coming together and people promoting Genius token, between all that coming together, it's happening a lot quicker than I've expected, massively quicker. The Legacy Genie, the Legacy Jenny placeholder token, 50-fold in price in like a month, and that was like astronomically faster than I would have expected as well. So things do move really quickly in this industry, and they move a lot faster than expected, especially when they're useful, especially when they make sense.
Yeah, but that in the end, Robert, that's what basically keeps us going. Us as investors, you guys as developers, and the other guys as marketers, and so on and so forth. Because it's a fast-paced environment, everybody needs to adapt. And yeah, I mean, as a comparison, and yeah, I'll make this my last comment before we think about wrapping this up. Think about what happened I'll say a couple of weeks ago with the hype on Kronos and not so much hype, if I may say, on BSC. So I think it was a I don't even remember the token, but I'm not gonna name it either way. That started off on Kronos, and then bam, everybody was like, we should trade on Kronos. It was the hype of the moment. So fast turnaround. Everybody that was thinking about trading on BSC, and there were some projects that failed due to the lack of interest because everybody was thinking, okay, Kronos is the next big thing. Surely it wasn't, and some of us knew, some of us didn't. But in the end, yeah, that's what happens within the space itself, and that's what happened last year with the NFTs. If you guys remember, NFTs were like a taboo subject, probably around this time last year. Nobody was mentioning NFTs. There were a couple of projects that had that within their roadmap, but nobody was covering that until the first ones came along. People saw what you can do with NFTs. Solana started to develop, and then boom, Solana went from like $25 to $200. Fast-paced changes. Everybody had to adapt. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that you guys are prepared for that, because you're not developing a meme token, a meme project. You're not focusing on a meme persona to create the pump and dump. This is definitely, I'll say, the most complex project I've seen in 2022, hands down. The most complex and the most, as much as I could understand it, based on your awesome explanations, probably the most complex as well. So yeah. Um, before we do the ending statements and wrap up, Robert, would you say, did we manage to cover pretty much anything from for the project itself? Did we miss anything? Do you want to make a another topic? Is there anything that we missed tonight?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Well, not really. I mean, one thing that I was thinking of when you're talking about the hype with Chronos, BSC, or people going away from BSC to go to Chronos because it's the next big thing. Yeah, that does happen a lot. Even with the Legacy Genius token, it hit like maybe 80 something cents, and it dumped because people were like, "Yay, let's take profits," and then other people were like, "What? Let me take profits too." And then it immediately recovered. And made all-time highs again. So that speaks a lot for how healthy the interest is for something. And it also helps show that a lot of the hype isn't from financial marketing. Like with Chronos, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of that was financial marketing, which is a company putting its own money into the market. And even Solana, same thing with Solana. Even though Solana is still sitting very pretty, despite being down all the time. I mean, probably not now, but maybe I'm making a mean comment with Solana, but that seems to be the case. But so there are super healthy indicators with Genius Token. But then again, it's hard for investors to know, well, what is a healthy indicator? Because this is a very different industry, very super different. And I appreciate your comments on those things. I didn't realize this would be such a complex sounding token, but I think we did cover very pertinent things that people really need to know about it. Yes, there's a lot of details that make the Genius token or the Genius Smart Financial Contract. There are a lot of details that will make it do what it's looking to do. But on the surface side, the purpose of it is to save, like retirement savings, passive income. This is a big point and purpose of the Genius Smart Financial Contract. It's something that everybody does want. Everybody does want to store their value and their hard work in a way for later. Well, not everybody, but most people do. And people who are in their 60s and 70s who've already made a ton of money and they're retired, they just don't want to lose their money. They want it to be protected in some way. And this is an interesting product for them. Investors who they want to amplify their value, this is an interesting product for them. Yeah, you can study the core part of it all day long. One, it doesn't mean you'll understand it, and two, it doesn't mean that your understanding will make it work. You just gotta watch it and experience it, use it, get involved in the community, and that'll be well worth the attention. So thank you. I think what we talked about here helps with that, and I hope anybody else who has questions will come to the Telegram group t.me/GeniCrypto, so t.me/GENICRYPTO, and ask us questions.
That's for sure. That I was about to suggest this, but I'll start right now, and I'll make my ending statement, just so that I give you the kind of the feeling that I got from the project. Although I mentioned this before, this is definitely the most complex and the best project, if I may, on a different perspective, not on a meme token itself. In terms of savings, who doesn't want to save? I mean, let's be honest. We're not going to be able to trade in a decentralized way like we are right now, maybe in I don't know, 15 years from now, maybe even sooner, 10 years from now, we're simply not going to be able to make it because institutions. It's all I'm saying. I wish we would be in this spot like we are right now, but in the end we have to think about what's going to come after that, and we have to do it in a proactive way. Like even right now, when the Feds are announcing the rates and the Bitcoin's dipping and the whole market is red. Personally, this is what I'm thinking. What is there to be done? Should I just, look at my monitor and close everything, watch a movie? What if this keeps going on for a month? Am I not going to make money for a month? Am I not going to learn anything? So all in all, that's what people need to kind of take a step back, look at the market. It's red. Everything is red. What can I do? Well, you can develop and grow as a person, as a grow your knowledge. If not the wallet itself, because it is what it is, but grow as a person. Evolve a bit when it comes to knowledge, and explore opportunities such as Genius, because it's for the long term. And this is what a lot of projects have mentioned in the past. We're long term. We're long term. Not to be rude or disrespectful to anyone, where are those projects now? At the first major crash, we knew they're not going to be there anymore due to various reasons. They were not built properly, their tokenomics were not sustaining them, the hype was simply not there, or, you know, it is what it is. Some projects have like a lifespan. They're going to start and they're going to end. We all know it, they know it. It's a fast-paced industry. We need to move at it. So that's my perspective on Genius. It's a long-term project. It's unheard of as a concept from my perspective. It's unique, and yeah, I definitely hope to see you guys out there. I'm looking forward to your development on the future, and yeah, I'm definitely curious to see how far you guys will go. Um, with good market conditions, with bad market conditions, you're not niche. You're not on a niche per se. You're targeting the whole market, the whole industry. So that's my take on it. Robert, you have the floor for your ending statement. And thank you. I speak for the community when I say this. Thanks for the wonderful opportunity, and for joining us here at Phoenix, and for presenting the pretty much everything that encompasses Genius.
Yep, thank you. Thank you. You've got a good point. Like with everything being in the red, people focus on themselves. Everything's in the red except for, Genius, Hex, Chronos we mentioned earlier, and things like that, and probably some other things too. But when we're focusing on ourselves, a lot of times people, let's say their salary is 50,000 a year, or their salary is 80,000 or 100,000 or whatever unit, whatever currency. But really, people are much more valuable than their salary. People, they're able to generate that income, right? So people are far more valuable than their bank accounts and the income that they get every 2 weeks or every month. And their value comes in their attention and their talents, right? Like in 1 hour, we can only put our attention into so many different things in 1 hour. Maybe someone can put attention on more things in 1 hour, whatever. That has a lot to do with their talents. But here, Genius helps monetize the very fundamental thing that is valuable about ourselves, which is the time we have, or the attention we have. And that has to do with, how to mine for Genius, but also our ability to keep our focus on the thing that we want to keep our focus on our goals, our promises. Inherently, people always have the right to change their mind. So since we always have the right to change our mind, that's our promises can change at any moment. So it's quite valuable when we keep our focus, when we keep our attention on the same thing, and we keep our promises. There can be a lot of value to that. That is quite a scarce thing. So Genius helps monetize these very fundamentally important things, and allows everybody to do that, allows everyone to participate into it. That's the point of it. That's the goal of it. Yeah. And that's it. Thank you. Thanks for letting me talk.
Awesome. Perfect. No worries, Robert. And just to be fairly honest, before we wrap up, the reason why I didn't interrupt you is because when representatives and tokens come with such passion, I don't want to step in and interrupt and say, okay, but I have a question. I would rather leave you to, to make your comments, your statements, your ideas, to expose them, to put them out there, and then we can discuss upon them. So yeah, definitely, it was quite a free session of education, if I may. People learned a lot. I learned a lot. So definitely thank you for that. You have quite the extensive background, Robert, and on behalf of Phoenix, I want to congratulate the team of Genius for developing and keep on developing the project itself. Yeah, we will wrap it up here. So again, thanks to everybody who joined. Thanks to Robert for his time, and thanks for bringing forward such an amazing project. Yeah, I was Alex, as always. Happy to
Thank you.
host you guys. Definitely thanks a lot, Robert. Hope you have a great rest of your night, and for sure we'll talk soon. Best of luck to the Genius project.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. It was lovely talking with you. Bye bye.